We had so much fun getting things out to people in time for the holidays, and gift buyers and collectors all had a great time, and I want to show you how it went. We did not have a great time with the post office. We're going to talk about that too, so stay tuned. This is the What Sold video for December of 2023. This was a piece that I got when I met Jocelyn, the crazy lamp lady in Ohio, and we got to shop with the Berner brothers, and this was in the Heart of Ohio Antique Mall. I thought it was really intriguing. I had not seen a Sargadelos piece before, and I didn't know about them, so it was a way to learn. I made some money on it, which was nice. It went to a very happy member of ours. It sold for $71 on 37 bids. I was really interested to see how much interest there was in this, because Sargadelos is in Gallica Gallica up on the northwest coast of Spain above Portugal. It's an area that was known for porcelain making, and then the Spanish Civil War pretty much sent all of that away, and when the war was over, people reestablished the porcelain works. And this is just a really interesting piece. It's got some of the colors you associate with Lladró and now in the Spanish porcelains, but a really different style, very modernist, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm glad it went to someone who was as intrigued as I was. And of course it was Christmas, so we had to sell a Christmas tree. This one is different. This one is a lucite acrylic tree that glows when you put a black light in it, and you see it there with the black light. And here's how it looked when it was just a tree by itself. These were made in the early 50s. It worked. It had the original bulb in it even, and the stand and everything. It went for $86 on 24 bids. I don't think a lot of people have seen these. I had never seen them before I got this one. I put 3 Star Wars characters up, and I was very curious to see how these would do. I got a very large collection. I decided to have a race between a character from Return of the Jedi, a character from the Empire Strikes Back, and a character from the original movie, now known as movie number 4, because the prequel trilogy came out long after the original concept of Star Wars was done, of course. This one went for the most of any of the characters. It had circle heels. The circles in the heels were so that they could sit on little stands, and the original characters didn't have that, and so those are worth even more. But some of the characters had come out and only at the end of the run were changed to the circle peg holder feet, and that is why that was an important thing to mention in the listing. Turns out there's a few things to know about these. I'm going to show you the next one here. This one ended up being returned to me, and what did I not know about this that I should have, and the customer couldn't see it either. He didn't have his proper weapon, and why did he not have his proper weapon? Well, unfortunately, someone had taken the weapon out and substituted it and then very carefully glued the bubble back on, so that anybody like me who didn't collect these personally and know that, well, you couldn't tell. The backs are also important. This is a 41 back. It depends on how many figures they had issued at a certain time. Here's the Jawa figure. It has a black cloak, and if it had the original orange cloak, well, that one is worth about 4 times what I got for this one, but I got $251 for this on 52 bids. Very active interest in these right now, as you can imagine. And this one has the proper weapon, which is why I showed it from the side. I knew that was a big deal on this one, and I could see it was the proper weapon. And this one has the back with the new characters that they were putting out. At this time, they said collect all 20. So this is an early piece, and that made a difference. This is a cool piece. I had to change the listing to disclose that the flange had been cut off. I mentioned and showed when I did the video about this, because these videos go out to members first. This is one of the early access bonuses you get if you're a level 2 or level 3 member. So thank you so much for our level 2 and 3 members who support this. One of them bid on this and said, you know, I think that's supposed to have a flange. That's why there's this cut at the bottom. I changed the listing to reflect that, and it went for $43. And I think the reason it went so high is because we're in the holidays and people are looking for these for doctors and people they know who are interested in such things. So it was a good piece, and it went to a good home. Henry Winkler, he sold. I thought he would. He has a book out recently. He seems like a really nice guy who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. He had just gotten out of acting school and was picked up for an 11-line role in the pilot of a new show called Happy Days. It was not supposed to be a recurring character. The Fonz ended up being one of the most popular television characters in TV history, so much so that Henry Winkler was typecast for years. This was not in good condition, but it went to one of our collectors, and I was really pleased she got it, and she really enjoyed it. Gosh, you know, Sarah Ferguson had a pretty tough time being a member of the royal family, but she certainly did well with her stint as the spokesperson for Weight Watchers, which lasted for a number of years. One size fits all, which I guess makes sense because it's Weight Watchers. And there it is, signed and personalized by her from 20 years ago. So that went to a new home for $20.50 on 7 bids. The McCoy Jolly Sailor Bank, I thought this went very well. These usually sell for $45 or $55. It went for the top end of that on 17 bids. I think this one was really nicely done. McCoy Pottery made these for the Seamen's Bank in New York. And McCoy, around the beginning of World War II, when these were starting to be made, was not known for its high quality. So the fact that it sold for a good price, I think, reflects the fact that this one was in particularly good shape and was a good issue of this piece. This little piece used to belong to Zito when he was a child. It was a child or lady size at the time. This is a swatch. The Swatch Company really rescued the Swiss watch industry when it was facing really tough competition from Japanese quartz watches. They found a way to make things fashionable in a very 80s way. Look at all the geometry there. And this one even had its wrist guards so that you wouldn't lose the thing, and the dial cover. All of those things together made this a reasonably desirable swatch for a fairly normal one, and it went for $37.66 on 7 bids. People keep asking, what from the 80s is going to be collectible, because we're starting to see a lot of estates that are turning over that are from the 1980s, and this is one of those things. This piece I found in a toy mall. It did not belong there. I recognized it as Blanco by Joel Philip Myers, and this was one of his first designs after he took over for Wayne Husted. It's in the sea green. I believe this is the last year that this piece was made in this color, and it is a big chunk of glass. They did not recognize what it was. I got it for practically nothing. I bought it in an antique mall for a thrift store price, and it sold for $44. Now, typically these sell for about $75. This brings up an interesting thing with eBay. Even though it says right in the listing that it's located in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, somehow eBay, with the standard shipping, which right there says it's only going to be $14.50, they ended up charging the customer over $30 for shipping. Now, typically I would refund some of that money to the customer, but in this case, well, the bowl sold for less than it should have because the customer was charged this huge shipping cost, and that's the reason that the bids didn't go higher. And I thought, you know, the customer got it for a fair price, and eBay just decided for whatever reason to split the cost between the shipping and the piece, and so I considered that a fair price. I still do not understand what happened there. We had this record pulled by eBay. This was another item we had in our top 20 that we were selling, and they said no. And at first I was a little cross about it because, again, like many other things I've put on that eBay has said no, 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 I could look and see all sorts of completed sales of the same thing. But I talked to a rep, and I have to say they were absolutely firm, and she was very polite about it. And I understand now why they had to do it. Because apparently, it says on the back here, oh, limited edition, and oh, these are interviews that have never been heard in some cases prior to their release in this series. Well, yeah, that's because they apparently got hold of a bunch of stuff that was off the record or not really recorded with the idea it would be released in this manner, or extra stuff from other people and other sources, and they did not credit them and they did not pay the royalties, and so that makes this a bootleg. And so when I went back on the computer, eBay, true to their word, anything that said back-to-back records, including all of these titles, pretty much are no longer available on eBay. So I have to give them credits and props for being consistent about their policies. I know why they have to do it. They are facing a big problem with counterfeits of shoes and purses and luxury goods and designer products. And if they let it proliferate, it will destroy the market, not just for the collectors, but for the companies that make those products. And nobody really wants to see that happen. And so for that reason, I understand that this record should not be sold on eBay. I also understand that the value probably just went up because bootleg records have always been considered a little more precious, a little harder to get, and a little more interesting by serious record collectors because they are not widely available on the market. Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead was very famous for saying in the middle of the concerts, "Hey everybody, hold up your tape recorders because we're going to do something that's never been released before," because Jerry Garcia had lots of money, had done perfectly fine, wasn't a real fan of the record industry, and was not particularly concerned with bootlegs coming out. But the record industry was very concerned about that. And so I can understand why. So this one, well, it may be verboten, but I think eBay may have done us a favor because it also may be more valuable now as a result. I thought this was really great because it was painted. I think my picture was a little bright and made it look like it was painted all over. And that was a problem. And because of that, it went for $36. That's not a terrible price. I would have expected it to go maybe closer to 40 or 45. I think the color on the bottom there is more reflective of what the color really was. And it just tells you pictures are really important online because a picture does speak 1,000 words. However, $36 was not a bad price given what I paid for it. It was perfectly great with me, and it went to somebody who really enjoyed it. This piece went a little cheaper than I thought it might, but that's partly because I really didn't play up the black memorabilia aspect of it at all. And that was deliberate because I realized that that is not a selling point for a lot of people, that this is a World's Fair item. And I thought it was fascinating because the Jamestown World's Fair was not successful. It lost a lot of money. One of the only pavilions that did well was actually the Negro Pavilion, as they called it. They were solicited by a group of black professionals and business people. This is in a time of very heavy segregation in Norfolk, Virginia. And they said, well, if you insist on having a pavilion, I guess we'll let you as long as you put it out on the edge. You pay for building it. You pay for staffing it. We have nothing to do with it. The Negro Pavilion was one of the only pavilions that made money. And I think it opened a few eyes that black people were able to manage quite well without any help from anybody else. It went to a regular customer and it went for $17.49 on 6 bids. I think they got a pretty good deal. But to be honest with you, I'm just glad it found a home with somebody who really could appreciate it and understand it for its historical context. This piece, on the other hand, went for a lot more than I was expecting. It had a great story too, and that related to a Japanese family that were in the internment camps, lost all of their businesses in Portland, Oregon, had to start over from scratch, and they started over by creating the Norcrest Company, which imported from Japan. And because this was a Japanese American who had pre-war connections to suppliers in Japan, he was able to build a very successful importing company and ended up buying a lot of the old part of Portland and renovating it and turning Portland from a very rough town into a very civilized place. We know Portland's having some problems these days, but Portland really has improved a ton over the years since I first went there. This was in great shape. These break a lot because you see that that spinner head is just sitting on ceramic, so it's easy to chip. This one was in perfect condition, and I think that's why it got 33 bids and ended up at $86.89. It's so funny to me, these fractions that people did. This was another really interesting piece, and I figured it could go anywhere from $50 to $100, and it went for $78. This is a submarine tray and model made in Australia during the Second World War. Australia didn't have its own submarine fleet, but 130 subs were stationed near Perth in the Fremantle area during the war, and this would have been sold to people on the subs to send home as a souvenir. It is not trench art. This was actually professionally made. And I love the way that the waves were done so that it looks like it's actually in motion on top of the ocean. It got 10 bids and went for $78. It's a rather unusual piece. I think that whoever bought this, I'm sure it fit their collection, but I think it was a smart buy because I doubt they're going to see one like it in a very long time to come. On the other hand, here's something that we do see these days, and boy, are they popular. This is the Fenton Vaseline uranium glass ginger jar with the log cabin hand painting. And this was for the centennial of Fenton glass. I decided to feature the picture with the uranium glow first. Sometimes that's a good idea. Sometimes people want it for other reasons like the painting, and so that's not always the thing to do with Fenton glass, but in this case it worked out well. There's the hand painter and her information, and you see it without the lid there. It was in great shape. It sold for $82 on 24 bids. Now this was not part of the original 20, but I have to talk about this piece because, oh my goodness, did we have trouble with the post office this year. The Postmaster General apparently owns freight forwarding companies who deal with Amazon, so he decided that Amazon orders should get first priority, and in the Evansville plant where this piece went through, they were only processing 75% of the mail every day. So this, which was sent 3 days before the recipient's brother's birthday, early in December, did not arrive until yesterday. It missed Christmas. I ended up having to refund the person the money. Then there was a huge hassle with the post office on whether they would redirect it. They wanted $120 to ship it back to me. I made a deal with the customer. If they ever get it there, please, can we work it out? And will you pay me for it? And he said, yes, my brother really wanted it. And thankfully, I got this message. OMG, it's here. It finally got there. This is after, look at all this malarkey. We had to go over and over. The post office in his area would tell him one thing, and then they would tell me a different thing. They said it was in transit. They said it was missing. Then they said it wasn't missing and that they'd cleared it, but they didn't know where it was. And then it finally showed up, thank goodness. And so his brother is now getting it as a belated Christmas present. I will probably, in the holiday rushes, ship UPS or FedEx in the future. I do not trust shipping large packages now through the US Postal Service after this experience. It was horrible. We had one other horrible experience with the post office as well. This sold for $250. Buy it now. It was the first thing that sold that we listed, and it's a beautiful, wonderful piece. And fortunately, the person who got it, by the time she got it, even though it was packed tightly in a very secure box with lots of bubble wrap around it, they threw this so hard that they managed to burst the bubble wrap internally, and then the piece continued, once it was loose, to break more and more of the bubble wrap until it drove a hole in the side of the box, because at every point, the people who were working for the post office kept throwing it and throwing it and throwing it, and because it was heavy and dense, it ended up with chips and little damage on the outside, and I had to refund the money. It was a terrible situation. I felt very badly for the piece and for the customer. The post office did us no favors this season on big, dense, heavy things. They just couldn't get it done, and I will not forget that. New York World's Fair picture book. This was in beautiful condition, and just look at the color, the wonderful pictures of all the buildings, the transportation building. It was just in really clean shape. It sold for $20 as a buy it now. That's about what they go for. Most of the World's Fair picture books from this middle period in the mid-1900s do sell in about that price range. I just got one from the Chicago World's Fair, so we'll see how that does. This piece sold immediately for the buy it now price. I do try to do buy it nows because even though this comes out as early access, you know, members do pay for this extra video. It takes a lot of extra work to put these together. So I'm very grateful for the support that the members give. If you're not a member on the level 2 or level 3 and you would like to have early access to see these pieces when we're listing them, please go to the membership line under the dash line in the description part of any of our videos, and you can find out more about how to do that. It sold for a fair price on the buy it now. It's an interesting golden glow with the variegated glaze. This is Nile oak, and you can see the satyr looking into the pool. They basically took their regular planter in the late 30s and added the figure so that the planter would be more interesting, and you see the pottery back label there on the back, and then the impressed mark on the bottom. So an interesting, fun piece, and that sold right away. This piece also sold right away, and this is an armband from the East German quote-unquote police helpers, who were basically civilian spies amidst the people. It looks like something that you would think of as civil defense in our country, but it was actually a way for the police to have henchmen running around and making sure that everybody did what the Soviets and the East German government wanted them to do. And thank goodness that's all over. They bought it at a buy it now for $19, which is not terribly expensive, but when the wall fell, a lot of these became available. So they're interesting more than they are scarce. So that was the rundown of how we did last month, and I love sharing this with you because it helps you get a better idea of what the market is at a certain place in time. We do these as eBay auctions as an experiment. A lot of these pieces, especially the Star Wars pieces, every one of them I started at $9.99, no reserve. So it's just let the market tell me where it is. And that is a risk that a lot of people who are selling on eBay are not willing to take. They want to price things firm. They want to price them at retail and wait for that customer. I like to see where the market really is, because some of these things I haven't had before, and you can go based on other people's experience, but circumstances are different. Who's shopping at a given time is different. So the market is very fluid. And so I like to let the market tell me. It's a fun way to do this. And I'm looking forward to showing you all the next level 2 and level 3 member video. It will be coming out very soon. So watch for that, and we'll have fun doing this again.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video, and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help, and we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.